pirates. Christ on a bike! How many more chambers of horrors are there? Go! Jake demands as he hauls open a door to reveal another massive hallway stretching into the darkness. On both sides are numerous side doors, and the musty stank of death and dust washes over him like a tide. A lot. Best I can figure, Thunderthought was a hoarder on top of being a completely deranged psychopath with an exhibitionist fetish for her murder streaks, Franklin says as he sends out the next automated pallet. They had been on Voxa for a long time now, and still there was so much to do just to clean away the nightmares of ages past. Today was a concentrated effort to just undo the effects of one serial killer. Hundreds of bodies, Jake says. We only gave this place a general scan before for life signs and came up with a big stinking nothing. So we sealed it up with no one to rescue and only now have the time to try and empty out this old butcher house, Franklin says. That and you weren't doing too well at the time. Jake replies as he wrenches open a door to find yet another room full of bodies of all kinds. The sheer stink lets him know only one thing clearly. This must be a fresher one, for want of a better word. And it really was a struggle to not just delete this entire complex, but that would be a waste. Franklin notes as Jake scans the room and it comes up with another 23 distinct genetic signatures from the mess of bodies. Hey, there's something pulling on Axiom in this room. Not much though, so, Franklin says as he opens the door opposite open, and there's a breath of musty, dusty air from inside. Both men melt to the side as they hear a plasma weapon power up and dodge a plume of armor melting energy. Jake brings out a shotgun and Franklin shifts things so they can both see into the booby-trapped room without putting themselves in the line of fire. Then they both relax. The bitch actually set up a plasma cannon to a tripwire? Jake demands as he leans into the line of fire and sees the cooling weapon. Smoke from the evaporated dust coils off the tip of the weapon barrel and gives it a fairly intimidating aura. Well, free weapon, I guess. He undoes the simple chain and drop system for the booby trap and hefts the large plasma weapon. It's a little dust-covered, but in fine form. It'll go into one of the many armories across Vuxa and have a higher calling than senseless murder in the hands of the Planetary Guard and Undaunted. Ah, shit, Franklin says, looking into the room Jake had opened. The massive blast of energy had gone over the pile of bodies, but it had revealed an empty space behind it. Franklin calls up a little ball of light and directs it through the hole to get at least some kind of idea of what's going on in there. The reveal of numerous tritite-coated walls makes him hum in thought. What do you think? Something that Thunderthought didn't know about? Or something she hid? Could be both, honestly. Miss Finnell wasn't exactly in the best mental health at the end of her life. She could have sealed that up and forgotten about it, Jake says as he walks over while doing a quick system check on the cannon. Very true, Franklin agrees, and he starts bending the axiom to shift his vision into the chamber. There's an entire hidden complex and Kutha wires leading into the distance to keep its machines empowered, so it's drawing its power from elsewhere and avoiding detection. Where's the power coming from? Jake asks, and Franklin can only shrug. If the wires are coated in tritite, then they could be incorporated all over the facility and disguised by the local machinery. It could be coming from the lights above us, the old recording equipment. Franklin shrugs again as he considers things again. This room is right under... Damn it, this base could easily be twice the size we thought, or bigger. We're calling this in, Jake says in a tone that's not up for argument. Agreed, some little auto-drones to check the rooms ahead too. If they're tritite coated, then I can't rely on Axiom to check for things. Like you checked for that trap? It was inactive. In a passive state, that thing's siphon feels like the same type needed for personal computers, cameras, a huge amount of grooming equipment, and all sorts of toys. It could have easily been some silly trophy, a bathroom, a recording room, or 1,000 other harmless things. Active weapons have a lot more aggressive siphons. Unless they're in a passive state due to the containment chamber being full and primed, Jake says. Yes, Franklin agrees. Right, this zone is officially hot again. We're getting the guys, Jake says, and they start making their way out of Jem Finnell's murder lair. Just great. Dead and buried by being subject to the chunky salsa rule and the woman still causing trouble. Wonderful, Miles notes as he has the situation explained again now that they've all arrived at the former base of operations for the serial killer. All right, gents, we're going in 4 teams 2 of 3 and 2 of 2. The teams of 2 are Lou and Beck and Ryu and Victor. You will be going around and searching for all the bodies in the non-hidden facility, with full awareness that there are traps and unmapped portions. Me, Jake, and Franklin will be going through the hole that the plasma cannon blew in the wall and both mapping it out and finding its main entrance. The second team of 3 is Marcus, Cy, and Jean-Luc. You're going to a central location and getting ready to reinforce any of the other 3 teams at a moment's notice. No one stay in front of an unknown door when you open it. We've already been shown tripwire cannons, so they have to be considered. We may have defensive brands, but plasma and lasers aren't the only things that use only a tiny amount of axiom in standby mode. There could easily be a railgun or a claymore behind a door. Right, hell, even a crossbow or a swinging blade gets through our brands. Play it safe. I don't want to get my hands into someone's chest cavity to try and keep them alive, Beck says morbidly. Jesus, man, what do you tell your son you do? Are you kidding me? Kareem's tougher than half you babies, Beck says with a sniff. All right, stow it. We're going in, Miles says, leading the way into the lair of the dead murderess. It takes only a few minutes to find their way past the hundreds upon hundreds of dead bodies that Fennell had stashed away like some kind of stab-happy squirrel, and find themselves staring at the hole in the wall. The tritites may be half a centimeter thick, more than enough to block my senses. What I'm getting out of the hole is too meshed together for me to know if there's a trap or not, Franklin says, even as he reaches into his pocket. So what's your, why are you just casually carrying an anatomical test dummy around? I regret to report that we have failed. This world cannot be conquered. He outlined the stubborn human resistance, the power of Earth culture, and the low morale of the troops. We must withdraw with dignity and leave this planet in peace, he concluded. To his surprise, the High Command agreed. Perhaps we misjudged these humans, the Supreme Commander conceded. They are more resourceful than we anticipated, and their spirit is indomitable. The order was given, the Thrum forces would withdraw unconditionally from Earth space. As the Thrum fleet prepared to depart, now littered with Earth decorations and rocking to blasting pop music, Commander Vort met with Earth's leaders. You have given us more than we bargained for, he admitted with grudging respect. In return, he offered an artifact of Thrum technology, a force field generator to protect Earth from future invasion. Vort took one last wistful look at the vibrant planet that had confounded his people so. The humans had emerged victorious, but there was no ill will. As the Thrum ships vanished into the stars, humanity celebrated their newfound friendship with their one-time enemies. Earth had not been conquered, but liberated, enriched by this cultural exchange to spread peace through the galaxy. I made a bunch of these for my last lesson on axiom use and had a couple left overs. I've expanded my axiom pocket so much actually I need to empty it out. I'm not fully sure what's in there anymore. Anything alive? Jake asks in a joking tone, and Franklin's expression goes legitimately concerned. If I did have something alive in there, then it's not anymore, he says, and both men turn to stare at him for a moment. Anyways, on to business. He throws the test dummy through the open hole and then focuses. There's a series of thumping sounds as he puppets it around to slam into multiple walls and anything that's around in the room. If there was a trap in there, that should have set it off. Subtle as a brick, Frankie boy, Jake says before adjusting his gear and hefting himself into the hole in the wall. Subtle, quick, effective, pick 2, Franklin replies as Miles levers up Jake's legs to help him through. You go next, I'll axiom myself through after. All right, Miles says, climbing into the hole before a boost from Franklin helps him through, and Jake helps him down. Franklin floats through the hole and softly lands. The bigger trooper has already found a light switch and activated it before looking around to examine exactly what kind of room they're in. Some kind of computer? Jake asks as he taps at a console. Or something with a computer integrated. Miles agrees as Franklin uses Axiom to stand up the crash test dummy and rubs it over the door out. Classy. Better than getting 1,000 volts for touching the door. I hope I'm not the only one that remembers Thunderthought's signature, Franklin replies before pulling the dummy away and then pushing it against the central wheel of the door and spinning it with the dummy. The entire room and door are plated with tritite so he can't directly influence his surroundings with Axiom. which just means he's going to be bringing more things in to mess around. Opening the door, Jake pauses in his fiddling with the console and turns around to level his new plasma cannon at the doorway as Miles pulls out his revolver and takes a steady stance. The arms of the dummy clasp around the wheel and pulls. The door slowly opens and reveals a pitch-black hallway beyond. Franklin sends a ball of axiom light down it to reveal several doors to either side and a stairwell going down at the end. All of it gigantic on the Lydra scale of things. Fuck, this place is bigger by at least one order of magnitude than we thought, Miles remarks as he straightens back up, and Jake slings his cannon in a stowed position again before turning back to the console. Well, we're not getting answers in here. Whatever this thing is, its console doesn't like me. I can tell it's got power, but we're missing some kind of key, Jake says as he leans to the side to start examining the sides of the machine. He finds a slot and nods. Yep, this is probably the key port here. Did Thunder Thought have anything on her? Not on her extended bodies, and if anything was on the main body, it was hit by the same force that reduced that part of her to tiny chunks, Franklin says. So we have to assume the primary keys were destroyed with Fennell. That doesn't mean there wasn't a backup, Miles remarks before sighing. Of course that's a reasonable thing to do, and expecting a madwoman murderess to be reasonable is fairly unreasonable. Yep, Franklin agrees, before he levitates the dummy out into the hallway and follows it a few meters behind. No traps so far. I'm going to open the first door on the left unless there are objections. Hold on a second, Miles says before tapping at his headgear. Mic test, 1, 2, 3, do you read? We got you, the signal's garbage though, the girl on the other end says, and he nods. All right, I'm going to start dropping relay beacons to try and up the signal, Miles says. Confirmed, the girl says. After Miles sets down the small blinking device in the hole between the main base and this hidden area, they all form up on the door Franklin indicated. There's a nod, and at Franklin's direction, the door's opened, and the dummy staggers in like a drunken man. There's no reaction, and Jake and Miles lean in to double-check the room. No response, moving in. They quickly find a light switch and reveal the room to be a disused laboratory with numerous countertops with deactivated burners, various spoiled chemicals and experiments hardened in beakers and containers. Not what I expected, Miles says. So was this an abandoned research outpost or something? Was Thunder Thought just using more and more of it as the victims stacked up? Franklin asks as he puts the dummy in the corner and lets it flop down as he starts walking around the room. Don't touch anything, Jake warns him. No shit, Franklin replies as his hands go into his pockets, and he starts leaning over to examine the labels on a few containers. Not in galactic trade, but vaguely familiar. As Franklin takes a snapshot of the script to try and find a possible translation, Miles is looking around at the counters and Jake is checking a storage cupboard. Whoa! Both other men are near him in moments as Jake stares at the numerous sealed jars with biological samples in some kind of vaguely green preservation fluid. Local animals? Fetuses, Miles says in a mildly disgusted tone, and Franklin walks up as one of them is niggling at the back of his mind. This one. These are supposed to be extinct, Franklin says, pointing to one of the jars near the middle. It's a cross between a serpent, an anglerfish, and an eel. Really? Oh yes, you remember those snake skeletons I rose out of the ground the night Thunder Thought died? Franklin asked. Yes. Well, although their cousin survived, this exact breed of the serpent is long extinct, long enough to have been fossilized, Franklin says, as he uses axiom to levitate the jar out so everyone can get a look at the vicious-looking creature. So was this some kind of wildlife restoration lab, trying to find a way to bring back extinct animals? Miles asked, and Franklin shrugs before levitating it back into position after his communicator chimes at him. Well, if the size of this place didn't give this away, then this certainly would. This lab was built by Lydris for Lydris, Franklin says as his translation comes back in full. It reads, Sample B-17 Control. So the question is, did Fennell start as someone in this lab and go nuts? Or did she come in later? Miles asks. Either way, if we can find a serial number or something for this lab, we should be able to get some kind of blueprint, even if we can't access its computers, Jake says, and everyone nods. Right, good idea.